Okay, Boker Sunday Tov. And the reason why I am showing you this video, let's listen in for a moment and get the energy of this video. So to give you some background here, is that this week is the okay, let's pause this and then I will explain. Here we go. Let's go here. I don't want you to see the whole mess in my office. And here we go. Okay. So first we always start, and let's do so with a bracha, as we make a bracha on the, whoopsie. Let's make sure the phone is steady over here. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nihiya bidvaro. Okay, answer Amen. I made a little mess over here, but I don't have a napkin. Okay, this is good. This is all good. It's good. So the reason why I'm showing you that video is because this week is the week of the annual Kinus HaShluchim, the annual world gathering of shluchim that happens, that is Chabad emissaries, Chabad rabbis, that happens once a year. Now, every single year, I am here on what we call Shlichut in Coral Springs for, I think it's now 30 years. And basically every single year, I think besides 1 year, I went to the international convention of all Chabad rabbis from the entire world. This is the first year that I'm not there in person because it's all being done because of COVID. It's all being done via the internet, Zoom and other, via the internet. So I want to talk about it. You see that dancing at the banquet, which is always the conclusion of the convention, and the tremendous energy that goes with it, or that exudes from the banquet, as we always come to the conclusion of the convention. And I want to explain why and where that energy comes from. It's the largest banquet, I believe, of any Jewish religious organization. There's full dinner banquet. There's usually about 7,000 people that come together in a huge warehouse turned into a ballroom, and it's just an amazing couple of days where we come together, and it is broken into both workshops where people and Chabad rabbis have breakout sessions to enhance programming, etc., get new ideas. But there's also a lot of inspirational getting together with friends to motivate one another, to recharge. And this week is that week where we have the convention. So we'll talk about that, but I want to always begin with words of Torah and tie it into what I'm just discussing about the convention. So this week's Torah portion that we just read this past Shabbat is Parshat Chayei Sarah. I know we spoke about this last week, but here we're mentioning another dimension of it. And I'm not sure if we spoke about this in the past with regards to in the realm of classes, but I want to talk about a thought in this week's Torah portion and connect it to the convention and explain sort of the secret and the meaning of Chabad as it relates to our convention that we're going through right now. Last night we sat together here in South Florida, connecting via internet to the ongoing worldwide. There was a 24-hour Farbrengen. If those who know the lingo sort of in the Chabad world, a Farbrengen again is an inspirational gathering, and there was a non-stop 24-hour Farbrengen, starting from Australia, where Shabbos finished, 14 or 15 hours earlier, and continued globally non-stop. So it was really amazing. But getting back to the Parsha, So again, this week's parsha is Parshat Chaye Sarah, which means the life of Sarah. And in the Torah, in the parsha, the Torah talks about the actual passing of Sarah, and Abraham's commitment to come and purchase a piece of property where his wife can be buried. And incidentally, sort of as a side point, a very important thing to talk about is that the Jewish way, starting as we see here from Abraham and even before, is that the proper way to respect and honor a deceased person is by burial in the ground, based on what the Torah says immediately by the creation of Adam, Afar ata velafar tashuv, you are dust and to dust you shall return. And cremation and all that is totally alien to Judaism and is not the proper way to put a Jewish body, which is so valuable, to put our body, Jewish or non-Jewish, to put it to either cremation or mausoleum is not the Jewish way. The Jewish way is to properly and respectfully bury somebody, and the soul to reach its proper place of peace is when the body is taken care of in a way that the Torah and God, the creator of man and the human being, mandates. And Hashem says that when He created man, He took earth and He blew a soul into the yipach ba'apav, into the nostrils of the human that He created, or the body that He formed. He blew in a neshama, and after 120, the ruach toshvel likim, the spirit, returns to God, and the body is interred in the ground. That's the way to do it. And perhaps in time we'll have a greater discussion, but if I could, in the course of this class, convince even one individual that they should have a proper traditional burial, then this entire class was worth it, because that's the way to do it. But that's a side point. So the Torah talks about the fact that Avram Avinu, Abraham, our father, that's the translation of the word Avram Avinu, went ahead and he put in all these efforts to go ahead and purchase a piece of property for his wife Sarah. And he did so in a very caring way and a very committed way, as the Torah dedicates many verses, and every word in the Torah, every letter in the Torah, we sometimes learn tremendous laws from it. So the Torah here dedicates many verses to record and relate how Abraham took care of his wife Sarah and buried her. And where did he bury her? In the Me'orat HaMachpelah. Now, I want to share the following. This is based on a Talmudic discussion. And I think I've shared this in the past, but we'll elaborate a little bit more. And so bear with me. And remember, as I always say, Sunday morning is Torah time. It's not quick 30-second. It's learning. We're getting together here and we're learning. So we know that Torah is comprised of the written Torah and the oral Torah. The written Torah is either the 5 books of Moses that we lift when we say V'zot HaTorah, or by broader extension, it's the 24 books of the Torah, the prophets, and the scriptures. Then we have what is called the oral Torah. The oral Torah is the Talmud, the Midrash. The Talmud is the most foundational sort of book of Judaism, because it goes ahead and it elaborates on what the written Torah tells us. And basically, Judaism today, as is practiced, is based on the elaboration and the sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The decoding many things that are mentioned in the written Torah in a very short or sometimes cryptic manner. So the Talmud goes ahead and it elaborates and defines to us. So to give just a very simple example, today every one of us have a mezuzah on our doorpost. A mezuzah, in the Torah it says, "Uchtaftam," you should write it on your doorpost. But how? Should you take a magic marker? Should you take a Sharpie? Should you take should you chisel the words into your doorpost? But the way we do it universally is that we go ahead, we put a scroll and we fix it to the doorpost. And this is all because of how it is elaborated in the Talmud, of how they learn from the nuances of how the Torah goes ahead and tells us about the mitzvah of mezuzah. The Talmud has a system of decoding which was passed on from Moses at Mount Sinai, and that's how we know to practice practical Judaism as is done, again, universally by Jews throughout the world. Now, the Talmud, in the beginning of Tractate Kiddushin, Kiddushin means betrothal. And the Talmud talks about, in the beginning of that tractate, the Talmud talks about how we go ahead and what is the mechanism for marriage. Marriage is a fundamental institution in mankind, in raising a family. And as everything else in Judaism, there's very clear guidelines and laws of how one performs and what sort of constitutes the mechanism of what makes a marriage happen. Now we know again that what is done under the chuppah or any marriage ceremony has the chatan, the groom, goes ahead and puts a ring on the finger of the bride. Now, where does that come from? It's a Jewish way of marriage and has become universally accepted in all societies, basically, or most societies. What's the not just the history? What's the legality behind it? So this is the story. The legality behind it is that the Talmud begins Tractate Kiddushin, the section that discusses marriage. Says like this, that the way one affects Kiddushin, the betrothal, the connection between a husband and wife. So the Talmud says there are various ways that could be done. And one of the things that the Talmud relates is that it could be done with kesef. It could be done by either a shtar, which is a document, or bekesef. And kesef means that the groom or the chatan, the male, gives the kala, the bride, a value of money. And like many things in Judaism, that's an acquisition, legal acquisition, which lends and gives us a strength, a kinyan, to what is being done over here. Therefore, when the Talmud says that how is marriage, one of the ways that marriage is affected is bekesef. Bekesef means through money, through the exchange of money that the chatan gives to the kala, that the groom gives to the bride. And then, over time, it has developed that you could give either money or you could give anything of value. So it has become the custom that how do we do the money element of Kiddushin? We do it through a ring. And that's already a custom. That's a custom. Why a ring? For various reasons. Why and what is the meaning of the ring? Just to mention one thing, that the ring represents that there is a circle between the husband and wife, and nobody enters into that type of intimacy, that type of relationship and affection and connection between husband and wife is a ring that nobody else enters into that type of expression of connection. But really, the legal element of it is the giving of value of money. Now, the Talmud asks the question, like everything else, once the Mishnah, the Talmud is structured in the Mishnah, and then you have the Gemara that analyzes and dissects sort of what are the statements of the Mishnah. And the Talmud then says like this, where do we know? How do we get this? The Torah, interestingly enough, the Torah in like other mitzvahs, but there are mitzvot in the Torah that the Torah elaborates more, and there are mitzvot that the Torah is very, very short and concise, or almost tells us very little about it. So the Talmud says, the Torah, meaning the 5 books of Moses, uses the term ki yikach ish isha, when a man will take a woman. It does not relate or say in the Torah how one affects that. In the Torah itself, in the written Torah, there's nothing. There's nothing that says how one affects marriage. So the Talmud, in the beginning of Kiddushin, says the following. There is a system in the Talmud that's called Gzeira Shaveh. The Talmud tells us that this is a system that it was passed on from Moses at Mount Sinai, that there's a system. We say every single day in the davening that Shlosh Esrei Midos Shahatorah Nidreshes Behem. There are 13 midot, 13 principles, methodologies of how the Torah is decoded. One of them is called a Gzeira Shaveh. Gzeira Shaveh means that if you have a similar word in one place in the Torah, it could be totally unrelated, and you have a similar word in another place, there is, you apply what we learn and know from one place to the other. And this is what's called a Gzeira Shaveh, and the Gemara says that the Gzeira Shaveh, which means the word code connection, is not something that we just do on our own. This too is something that is passed on from Moses at Mount Sinai. So the Gemara says, the Talmud says the following. The Talmud says, how do we know that Kiddushin, that betrothal, the mechanism of marriage can be affected by kesef, by money? Says the Talmud, Yalif, we learn out kicha mizdeyafron. You learn out the word kicha and kicha. By marrying a woman, it says ki yikach ish isha. Yikach is kicha, that's the root of the word, when a man will take. And when Abraham went ahead and purchased a field for his wife's burial, it says, Nosati kesef asad, I gave the kesef, I gave the money for the field, kach mimeni, take it from me. So just like over there we find in the Torah, when it comes to a exchange of money, the Torah uses the term kach. Kach means take, but here it means more specifically kach in the terms of a legal sort of acquisition. So too, when the Torah says ki yikach ish isha, that when a man will take a woman, it means he takes her how? Through the exchange of money. This is what the Talmud states. Okay, fine, very good. So that's how we know the legal background of how we learn and know that marriage is affected, or the betrothal element of marriage is affected through exchange of money. Now, having said that, there's an obvious question over here. True that the concept of a Gzeira Shaveh is something. Gzeira Shaveh again means you find a word here and you find a word there, and it is passed down from Moses, like these code words that Moses threw into the Torah to learn from one place to the next. For whatever reason, that's a system in deciphering Torah. And it doesn't have to have any content connection. Nevertheless, when we study Torah, we must seek for, and we must learn, try to learn and see if there is a connection. So over here the question is asked, why is it that something like marriage, which is such a fundamental institution in the Jewish family, and in not just the Jewish family, in the family of mankind, of the human being, the healthy marriage between a man and a woman is the foundation of a family, and in turn, by extension, it's foundation of a healthy society. So therefore, the question is, what is the connection? Why is it that we learn it from the fact that Avram bought a burial plot for his wife? And what was that? That was the Ma'or Samachpela, the double-leveled cave that is in Hebron today, that we go and we visit and cherish and so on in this holy city of Hebron. Now you could say to me, yes, the reason we learn it from there is because here we see the love of Avram to his wife, so it's very befitting to learn this legal element of marriage from Avram's buying a plot for his wife. But it's a little disturbing that where should we learn it from? We learn it from a place where Avram is dealing with his wife after she dies. And burial, it doesn't seem like a very happy way to learn the legal, again, mechanism of marriage. So there are various explanations. Chaim. One explanation, by the way, just a bit of a cute explanation, is that it's a little bit of a sort of a what in Yiddish we would call a balabatish teretz, meaning it's a humanistic type of explanation, but it's a cute explanation. Is the following: what was the story of Avram buying the plot from Ephron, who was the representative of the people of the Hittites? Is that the story is that at the end, Avram went ahead and he paid top dollar for, the Torah says, 400 golden shekel, whatever the coin was, over la socher. He paid top dollar for it. So what happened that night? That night, and initially Ephron said, just take it for free. And Avram said, no, I don't want to, I want to pay for it. I want to pay for it. I want to make sure that there's no question about this property that I'm burying my wife. No gifts. I want to pay for it top dollar. And Ephron, even though initially he said take it for free, he says, okay, I mean, just what is $1 million between the two of us? And as the Rashi says, he spoke a lot but did little, in the sense that he was a big talker, but he took big bucks for it. Ephron came home that night and said, did I do a deal today? I did a deal where I went ahead and this piece of property, a little piece of earth in the middle of nowhere, which is worth garden bupkis, and I got top dollar for it. And he was as ecstatic as can be. Avram Avinu, who purchased the property, came home that night, and he said, a piece of property where Adam and Eve are buried in the holy city of Hebron. There is no more valuable real estate than this in the entire world, and I paid a measly $1 million for it. I am the most fortunate individual that I had the merit to put my righteous Sarah, the mother of nations, and I went ahead and I was able to put her in such a special, most valuable real estate. What is the lesson from that to marriage? In a marriage, that's what has to happen, is that each party, is the woman or the wife or the bride has to think to herself, who am I? I know my faults, I know my weaknesses, I know my shortcomings. I was fortunate to marry a guy. He's so handsome, he's so intelligent, he's so kind, he's so good, he's so giving, he's so talented, etc., etc. I got the best end of the deal over here. And that's how she's, hopefully, she could approach marriage with that, always throughout life, recognizing how fortunate and how blessed she is. And the same thing, the husband and the groom, of course, has to have that recognition as well. As the Talmud says, the expression chayav odom lechabed et ishto yoter migufo. A person has to respect his wife more than he respects himself. And in order to achieve that, it's not merely by acting that way, but it's by truly appreciating and saying, me, I'm not a shlemazel like me. I know my shortcomings. I know my weaknesses. I know my interests, and just what I would like to do. And here I have a woman that's so dedicated and so committed and so wonderful, and raising my kinderlach and putting in time and effort and energy and heart and soul and care in raising and taking care of me and taking care of my family, etc., etc. I got the best end of the deal. I am the most fortunate individual. So that's one answer of why on a deeper level we learn the mechanism of marriage from the story of Avram and Ephron. But then there's a deeper explanation, and this relates to the kinus hashluchim, the convention of shluchim that's going on right now, and that is the following: Ma'aras HaMachpelah is a land, and it's a double cave. Double cave, meaning that there is the underground level and there's the level above. And I know we spoke about this in the past. That in a marriage, we know the famous Yiddish expression that captures what a marriage is about, and that is, it's bashert. It's bashert. What does bashert mean? Bashert means that it is something, the Talmud says the following, that 40 days before the formulation of a child, there's a baskel, there's a heavenly voice that comes forth and issues this call and says, the son of so-and-so will marry the daughter of so-and-so. In other words, it's bashert. It's already predestined. This one is predestined to marry this one. In a marriage, is the revealed part of the marriage. Are they compatible? Do they work well together? Do we have the same goals in life? And then there's the beneath the ground, the hidden that we do not see, the mystical, the deeper dimension of the connection and the oneness of the souls between husband and wife. So we learn from the purchase of the Machpelah that in a marriage it's like a cave, like a piece of property, and then there's the underground element. In a marriage, there's the underground concealed element that we do not necessarily understand and see. But these two souls that are coming together are meant for each other in a way that is beyond what we could see and understand and comprehend and grasp, etc. And when you approach marriage in that way, you're definitely going to have a far more successful marriage. And why do I say this? This is the lesson from the parsha, and this could be elaborated. You could do so on your own. I say so because as we're celebrating right now the convention of the shluchim, and as I showed before, the dancing and the joy. This is one thing. We are shluchim, emissaries of our holy mentor and teacher, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson. And I want to explain this with the following story, or sort of anecdote interaction that somebody wrote, or maybe in a private audience asked the Rebbe, what is the point of reaching out, of trying to improve? He says, as Freud put it, basically we're all selfish. We're all in it for ourselves. That's what motivates us. Whatever we do, we're motivated by self-interests. So, what's the point, basically? And he elaborated on this concept, on this shortcoming of the human being. And he said that basically we're all just mud. We're mud. We're earth. So the Rebbe responded and said to him the following. He says, I'm going to use your example. He says, when you look at a city, and we build a beautiful city, you have trees, you have a garden, you have homes, and all is beautiful and wonderful. Parks. But what's the point? Because if you just dig a little bit, you're going to see dirt. You'll see shmutz. It's all shmutz. It's all dirt. It's all earth. It's all mud. So what's the point? However, if you dig a little bit deeper, that's when you start to get to Earth's treasures, valuable stones, deposits of whether it's oil, whether it's metals that are so valuable to society. He says the same thing with every single human being. The Rebbe fundamentally disagreed with Freud. He said, yes, at a more conscious or more surface, even subconscious level, there might be a lot of selfish drive and so on. But since God blew within us a spirit of life, we have a neshama, a soul, that if you go even deeper, you're gonna you go deeper and you dig deeper and you uncover the depth of every single human being, you will find the greatest treasures. It's just that you have to keep on digging. And that is part of, it is such a difference in how you approach another human being and you see their potential, that it fundamentally changes how you interact and you relate to somebody that you're out there and that you're trying to inspire, and you're trying to bring them closer and back to their roots, when you have that deep belief on how you function. And that was a key inspiration that the Rebbe gave to us, his students, and in turn to share with the world that every Chabad house or every student that is inspired by the Rebbe's directives, and that's part of what we're celebrating and coming together during the convention to remember that important view of how we see a fellow man, a fellow human being, that is the key to transforming the world one person at a time for the better. And it is so much more critical now when we are in a time where there is no secret that there's a lot more unfortunate divisiveness, and there is definitely stoking of negativity and self-interests. So the time to be able to look beyond and deeper than that, and to be able to bring out the good or the deeper treasures that every one of us has, regardless of what on the surface might be deep differences. That is what the convention is about, sort of rededicating ourselves to that commitment, that viewpoint, that approach, etc., so that we could be, as King David says in Psalms, Zorach Oir B'choshech, he shined forth light in a time of darkness. It is our responsibility, and we have the ability and the strength through the teachings of the Torah, which are so powerful, to bring light into a world of darkness, into an environment of darkness, starting with ourselves, our inner selves, and then beyond. So that's the thought of today, and everybody should have a wonderful week. I want to just mention that we were very blessed. Where on the one hand, it's maybe unfortunate that there is such a need, but on the other hand, when you have the merit, together with so many good people, to reach this past week on Wednesday afternoon, we had almost 2,000 cars that came by Chabad of Coral Springs, and we gave food to people. If you think about 2,000 cars, and the average family is, let's say, 4 people, and sometimes you're talking about 5,000-6,000 people. But the reason why I'm saying this is because this is being done because there's so many amazing volunteers. And if you have the time on a Wednesday afternoon, anytime from, I would say, 3 to 7 or to 8, to come by and help, to volunteer, or if you have an older teenager, there's just a wonderful energy out while we're doing this, and we could use more volunteers. So it's just a beautiful mitzvah. So that's that. Sei gesund. Have a fantastic week. Please share these words of Torah. Everybody have only blessings, only bracha, full of blessings.